This is the keyboard on your mobile phone. Pretty standard. You have letters, and every time you tap on the rectangle of a letter, that letter is typed. Easy, right? Well, that's wrong. When the engineers building the first iPhone were designing the keyboard, they tried just that, and it was a disaster. The keys were so small and clumped together, and they were making so many mistakes that it was unusable. And if they didn't get the keyboard right, they knew the iPhone would flop. But whatever crazy concept they tried, it wasn't working. Until an engineer named Ken Cosienda comes along with a new prototype. The keyboard looks totally normal, but when they tested it, it was working. You could type without making mistakes. What? He made a keyboard that looked totally normal, but the invisible touch areas that would register each letter if pressed were adjusted dynamically based on what was the most likely letter you were gonna type next. If you type TH, for example, the hitbox of the letter E would be massively bigger. The system is using the dictionary and a history of the words that you type most to figure out the most likely next letter. And this is still what is powering the keyboard on your phone today. Behind the things you do every day, thousands of times, and that seems so simple, there's a crazy hidden world of design, engineering, psychology, copying nature, tricks that play with your mind, and details that make you think, how the f did they come up with that? I'm Enrico, I'm a product manager working in tech, and on this channel I go behind the scenes of the tech that you use every day. And I promise you, after this video, you'll never look at what's on your phone or computer the same way again. But let's start simple. What's the simplest thing you can do on your phone? Tapping a button. Easy, right? Well, so here we have a button for a calculator app on your phone. Okay, but something looks off. That's because we are missing a key component, which is feedback. Anything happening on any interface needs feedback to confirm to the user that the system is working. So let's throw that in. Wait, now as soon as I tap, the action still happens right away, and that's not right. We need to design our button so that the action activates not when we start the touch, but when we end the touch. So I can hold it down. Okay, but this creates another problem. What if while I'm touching down, I move my finger away from the button? If we don't do anything, as soon as I release the finger, even if it's outside the button, it's gonna type a 9, and this is wrong. So let's add that in. And also, my fingers are not incredibly precise, so I need a tap area around the button so that when I press and I move around a bit, it's safe and I have some wiggle room. But hey, what if I start a tap and go out and then go back into the button? Well, logically, it should give me feedback again and confirm the action. And this single goddamn button has opened up a new whole world of decision details and design that 99.9% of people using technology just take for granted. This is interaction design, the art of making the interaction with computers, which are cold, precise, and unforgiving machines, closer to us humans. And it's everywhere, even behind things you never really thought about. So try and find where the typing cursor on this block of text is. It's taking a while, right? Well, how about now? The typing cursor will use blinks to make it easier to find on a page while we are at rest and not typing. But as soon as we start to type, it doesn't blink anymore. If it did, it would be distracting, so it stays solid. I've been using computers for 25 years and I just realized this in making this video. The core problem is that computers and humans are on the opposite side of the spectrum. We use intuition and instinct, and our brain has evolved to survive in the forest and hunt food, not use Excel on a Thursday. Computers, on the other hand, are suckers for precision. They're cold and calculating. So, in order to turn this into something a normal person can use, designers and engineers touched grass and they turned to copying nature. But as it turns out, copying nature is hard. You probably have come across swiping some things that just don't feel right, like this one. What is wrong here? This swipe lacks interruptibility. When you start a swipe, it just goes until the end. But this is not how the real world works. Take changing a page in a book, which is the same motion. If you're halfway, you can just go back. It's natural. And this is why when something is well designed, you can really feel it. It's almost working like magic. For example, the app switcher on the iPhone would never dismiss an app before you actually flick it off the screen and end the movement. Because all this swiping and flicking that we all got used to is only here because technology was able to take our small monkey brains and rewire them. Let me explain. Take this screen right here, Spotify. I can swipe left and right to change songs, I can swipe down to close this panel, and I can swipe up to see the lyrics. Now, out of all of these, swiping up for the lyrics is the only one that has an affordance, which is this thing right here that is telling me, hey, there's more down here, just scroll down to see it. In the real world, we rely on affordances to tell us what to do. A door handle is the most famous example of an affordance. Once you see it, you know what to do. 20 years ago, most people were new to digital interfaces, and so designers and engineers had really to hammer it down and use very explicit affordances and metaphors to make people understand how to work with technology. And the wildest example of that is Microsoft Bob. What? You don't know of Microsoft Bob? It was an experimental system that was taking affordances from the real world and straight up making them digital. Your desktop is literally a desktop. Your documents are literally documents. Your email is a parrot. This style is called skeuomorphism, or using real-world objects to give meaning to digital interfaces. But nowadays, we don't need this anymore. We are so accustomed to digital interfaces that they were able to rewire our brain. And if I show you this, you know exactly what you can do. Scroll up, tap here, it's all hardwired into our brain. But at the same time, our ability to design interactions that emulate nature and are intuitive also help to get rid of affordances and skeuomorphism, and this is what gave birth to the minimalistic design that we all use today. But sometimes they take it too far, and there's no way to know how you can interact with something. Did you know you can swipe on the player here in Spotify to change songs? But sometimes, copying nature turns out to be a complete mess. Another action that we do every day that hides an ungodly amount of complexity is scrolling. In the past, scrolling was like this, clunkily moving the page down in chunks when you use the scroll wheel on your mouse. But the scrolling we have today, the smooth one, is called inertial scrolling. And once again, by copying nature, it works just like regular physics. Our fingers give speed to the page, but just like a car is slowed down by friction of the tires with the road and air resistance, it will eventually decelerate all the way to zero. Unless you're in space. We are very used to this, and that's why it feels so natural. So let's build it. Here I have my position going down linearly, and this looks so bad. What's going on here? Well, it turns out that most of nature is not linear, so we need to find a deceleration curve that feels natural, and there's an infinite amount of them. We can go square roots, natural logarithms, then use that and integrals to calculate velocity and position, and getting to do something as simple as scrolling has now become a mathematical mess. And just in case you want to flex at the next party, the math function of the deceleration rate for scrolling in the iPhone is base 10 logarithms. Another property of nature is elasticity. Our skin is elastic. When you reach the end of a list, it goes back to its original place, almost like there's a spring in there. Well, this is another one where it's more complicated than it seems, because the velocity of something controlled by a spring is not linear. We need to model a spring system where to control the weight of the object, the tensile strength of the spring. So yes, the physics you studied in high school is not totally useless. But it's not only about nature, because technology also uses something else to trick you, your own psychology. So let's load something. You are waiting for your app to load and you get this. Whoa, this feels broken. It was all empty and then all of a sudden an app appeared out of nowhere. And also it took a very long time. That's because we are not telling to the user that we are loading something. So let's add a spinning wheel here. We are all used to that. And oh, now it's clear it's a loading screen. But we can take this one step further. We can trick your brain into making this loading time shorter without actually making it shorter. And for that, we are going to use something called skeleton loaders. They are these outlines of your interface that appear while you wait. These actually make the loading take more time because you actually have to load and display all these animations, but they trick your brain by giving it something to process in the meantime, reducing the perceived time it takes for things to load. And once things are loaded up, you also have the benefit of already knowing what the structure of the page will be, instead of having to process everything all at once. Another psychology trick is Fitts' law, which states that the time required to move to a target area is a function to the distance and the size of the target. This is why important buttons are usually large and close to where you're focusing. So the more important the action, the larger and closer it should be, right? The back button, which is one of the most important ones on Android, was historically here, where your thumb could reach it, but it was not huge. But they used Fitts' law to find a better solution, swiping from the edge of the screen. That's how I go back on my phone. Instead of making the back button larger, any edge of the screen will be always closer to your thumb. And since you swipe from outside the screen, the area is technically infinite. But it's not only psychology that drives the design of things. Especially in the past, technical limitations were driving how technology was designed. And sometimes these decisions just remain there for decades. The mouse cursor, the one we use to control our computers, is an arrow that's pointing on the top left. Why? Why couldn't it be pointing up or down or on another corner? Well, in computers, the anchor point from which images are painted on a screen starts from the top left corner. But in that case, to calculate exactly where it's pointing, you need to do a subtraction operation to calculate its coordinates. This is not a problem today, but back in the day, this saved some precious computations. So they said, F it, and made the arrow point to the top left. Now, we are emulating nature using complex tech, using genius and carefully crafted designs and psychologies to make technology easier. But now there is another challenge on the horizon. It took 15 years to build the natural interactions that we have today. But now we have to start again from scratch. The Apple Vision Pro and the Quest 3 are creating new ways of interacting with augmented reality. Controllers are going away in favor of using your hands, and creating natural ways to control these interfaces is the challenge of the next 10 years. And as we go towards smart glasses and true augmented reality, this is gonna make or break the successor to the smartphone. For example, we are already seeing an agreement that this is a click, and you can use it to drag things as well in the interface. But then there's pieces that need to be figured out. Apple wants to use eye tracking, and it's pretty cool but impossible to scale down to real smart glasses. And keyboards, well, keyboards will be a real pain in the ass. I tried Meta's keyboard in the Quest 3 and it's very frustrating to use. And these small things that may seem like afterthoughts are what will make or break the next generation of devices, because they are what creates that feeling of magic and wonder. Oh, and if you want to get a deeper dive on what will actually be the successor of the smartphone, you can check out this other video right here.